Today's story is so raw, it cuts straight to the bone, unfolding beneath a winter sky where the past refuses to stay buried. This is where two broken paths cross, one marked by violence, the other by quiet resilience. It all starts with one choice made in the cold, a moment that sets an entire lifetime in motion. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. I had ended the lives of 23 Apache fighters over 2 decades in uniform. Never crossed my mind that the 24th would be the one I dragged back from death. It was December of 1886. The Mogollon Rem buried under snow so thick it dulled sound itself. I was alone by the hearth, the fire popping low, a bottle of rye warming my palm, when a sound cut through the night and locked my spine stiff. Not an animal's cry, not the wind. A scream, raw, final human. I took up my Spencer and stepped outside into the Arizona cold that sliced clean through bone. What lay beyond the tree line rewrote my life. A woman Apache, late 20s, maybe collapsed beside a horse already stiff with death. An arrow lodged deep in her shoulder. Blood spread across the snow like spilled paint. Her buckskin was torn and frozen against her skin, the kind of sight that could shake faith loose from a preacher. Any man with sense would have turned away. Back then, Apache meant war reprisals graves. But when her eyes found mine, dark, unflinching, fierce, despite the pain, something inside me gave way. Pride, defiance, a beauty as violent as a summer storm. I knew in that moment I was done for. Some choices, damn you. Others save you. You never know which until it's too late. I carried her back to my cabin. That was when the second blow landed. She spoke English. Clean, precise. "You're the one they call Rook Calder," she said, staring straight through me. "The cavalryman who killed Cinder." My hands stopped mid-wrap cloth slack in my grip. Cinder. The name dragged memory up by the throat. A warrior. Canyon Creek. 2 years past, 1 shot, straight through the chest. "You know who I am," I said. "I do." Her voice never wavered. Cinder was my husband. I'd faced charging lines, starving winter's bears with nothing but steel in my hand. None of it prepared me for that weight settling on my chest. I was binding the wounds of the widow of a man I'd put in the ground. "Why aren't you reaching for the knife?" I asked. "It's right there." She studied me a long time. "Because monsters don't carry strangers out of the snow." In the days that followed, she told me everything. Her name was Saya. After Cinder died, the flint draw. Apache had no place for her, no children, no husband, a mouth to feed. Worse still, she had refused White Scar, the medicine man who wanted her as a third wife. He called her cursed. She said he feared her knowledge. I watched her work herbs into paste hands, steady sure. She knew what healed and what ended life. She moved with purpose, every motion measured like water finding its path through rock. I caught myself looking when I shouldn't have, the line of her waist, the fall of her hair when she leaned forward. We learned each other's worlds. I showed her the stove letters on a page. She showed me tracks in snow which berries spared hunger and which brought death. She told stories her grandmother had whispered long ago. One morning as I split logs behind the cabin, a black bear wandered too close. Big, starving. I raised the rifle, but Saya stepped between us and spoke calm as breath. The bear huffed once and turned back into the trees. "How?" I asked. She smiled. "I told him we are family." That was the first real smile I saw. Nearly 300 pounds of fur muscle and hunger stood in front of us, claws sunk into thawing earth after a brutal winter. I had my rifle halfway up when Saya stepped in front of me, speaking softly in her own tongue, steady as if she were calming a skittish horse. The bear studied her, snorted, once then turned and lumbered back into the trees. "How in God's name did you manage that?" I asked. She smiled, quiet, unguarded, the first true smile I'd seen from her. "I told him we were family," she said. "Bears understand family." That night we sat by the fire, the flames low and steady. She asked about the war, about the men I'd put in the ground. I didn't soften it. I gave her the truth, the blood, the screams, the faces that refused to leave my sleep. She listened without flinching, reaching for my hand when the weight pressed too hard. "You carry them with you," she said. "They're spirits. That's why you live alone. You believe peace isn't meant for you." She wasn't wrong, but with her there, something in me began to loosen. We grew closer, and not just in words. The way her shoulder brushed mine when she passed the salt. The way I caught her watching me when she thought I wasn't looking. The night she asked me to help wash her hair, her fingers lingering as I worked soap through the long, black strands. "You don't owe me anything," I told her one evening. "You can leave whenever you want." She kept stitching, needle moving in calm, even rhythm. "Nothing keeps me here," she said, "except choice." 2 months slipped by like that. Snow pulled back from the mountains. Green crept into the valleys. I began to believe foolishly maybe that the two of us could build something solid. Then they arrived. 5 riders came at dawn in late February, dust rising beneath their horses. Flint draw men. I recognized the leader immediately, White Scar, the medicine man she had refused. He had a face drawn tight as dried leather eyes, sharp with old resentment. "The woman belongs with her people," he shouted in rough English. I stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand. Saya came out behind me, chin lifted, unbowed. "She belongs wherever she decides," I said. White Scar laughed, the sound hollow and brittle. "She carries death. A curse. Anyone who touches her rots. The only rot I see is standing in front of me," I answered. His eyes narrowed. "Give her to us or we take her and burn this place to the ground." I had 1 rifle against 5 armed men. Good numbers for dying, bad ones for backing down. When I looked at Saya, saw the fear she fought to hide the answer, settled hard and clear. "You want her," I said. "You come through me first." I raised the Spencer and chambered around. The sound cracked through the canyon like thunder. That's when Saya stepped forward. She spoke fast, sharp, her voice carrying authority. I didn't need to understand the words to feel. She wasn't pleading. She was challenging them. White Scar's color drained. He shouted back, pointing at her stomach. That's when I saw it. The faint curve beneath her buckskin. The fatigue. The sickness in the mornings. The way her hand had begun to rest there without thinking. She was with child. Everything shifted. She was carrying a child. 4 months along, maybe more. "Cinder's child," Saya said in clear English, her gaze locked on the old medicine man. "The sun you swore would never rise." The flint draw men exchanged looks, doubt flickering across hardened faces. A child born after death carried weight in their world. It meant return. It meant power. Something White Scar could not afford to lose. He stammered, voice cracking as he tried to seize control again. Lies. Deception. But Saya wasn't finished. She reached beneath her collar and drew out a small bundle worn smooth by time and touch. "Cinder's medicine," she said. "He wore it into battle. He gave it to me before Canyon Creek." She held it up so they could all see. He said if he fell, his spirit would come back. Through his child. I'll admit it. I felt a flash of respect. She wasn't pleading. She was maneuvering, turning their own beliefs into a blade. She had them exactly where she wanted them. The youngest rider finally spoke, his voice measured, almost reverent. "If the child lives," he said, "then Cinder's spirit lives." "The child will live," Saya answered. and it chooses to stay with the man who showed honor to its mother. They argued among themselves in their own tongue for nearly an hour, voices rising and falling with the wind. At last, White Scar spat into the dirt and swung into his saddle. "We leave," he said. "But the curse walks with you. Death walks with everyone I called after him. Just not today." When the riders disappeared into the hills, Saya and I went back inside. We sat at the table in silence, the fire ticking low, the weight of everything pressing down between us. At last I asked, "Is it true?" She rested her hand against her belly. "Not it," she said quietly. "A son, Cinder's son, late summer. I might have felt jealousy. Another man's blood, another man's name. But looking at her there, steady, fearless, I felt only one thing. Resolve. That child would have a father. Not by blood, maybe, but by choice. We'll need more room," I said. She smiled then. Not guarded, not cautious, a smile that filled the cabin. "Yes," she said. "We will." Spring came early. We worked shoulder to shoulder, cutting timber, widening the cabin, readying it for new life. I taught Saya how to fire the Spencer in case trouble returned. She taught me old songs, low, steady lullabies meant to calm a restless child. At dusk, we'd sit on the porch and watch the canyon swallow the sun. She'd lean against me, my hand resting on her belly, feeling the life stirring beneath my palm. Those moments were peace. One night she asked, "Do you think Cinder would approve?" I thought for a long while. "I think he'd want his child safe," I said. "Loved. If that's here with me, then yes. I think he would." "And your wife?" she asked softly. "Would she?" Elsbeth called her. "Gone 3 years now. Taken by sickness. Buried beyond Fort Apache. She'd always said home wasn't walls, it was who stood beside you." "She'd understand," I said. The child came in August, born beneath a thunderstorm that shook the mountains and split the sky open. I brought that boy into the world with my own hands, these old fingers better suited to reins and rifle stocks guiding new life for the first time. When he finally drew breath and cried out in protest, something inside my chest gave way. Love. Plain. Undeniable. Saya named him Kellen, a name meant to walk both paths. One foot in the white world he would have to face, the other rooted in the blood of Cinder the warrior who gave him life. The boy grew fast, sharp-eyed, steady, fearless. He learned English and Apache side by side, never favoring one over the other. He rode my shoulders while I checked fence lines, laughed when the cattle kicked dust. At night he listened wide-eyed as Saya spoke of his father, a man of courage and honor. When he was old enough to ask, I told him everything. How Cinder died, how his mother found me in the snow, how love sometimes grows in places no one expects. "Are you my father?" he asked one evening, no more than 6, solemn as a judge. "I'm the man who loves you and your mother," I said. "That's what makes me your father in every way that counts." He thought on it, then nodded once. "Good," he said. "I like that." We lived that way for 15 years. 15 quiet years in a land that rarely offered quiet to anyone. We endured drought and flood winters that cracked bone summers that scorched the earth bare. But we endured them together. Saya and I never stood before a preacher. No church would bind a white man to a woman of the flint-draw Apache back then. But paper and words weren't needed to know where we belonged. Some nights, lying with her head against my chest, listening to Kellen practicing his reading in the next room, I'd think of every road that led me there. Every mistake, every grave, every scar, and I knew it was worth it. All of it. Kellen eventually went east for schooling, came back wearing a lawyer's coat. He married a good woman from town, and gave us grandchildren who called me grandfather, without ever questioning the lines in my face, or the color of my skin. Love doesn't measure those things. It measures what lasts. I'm an old man now. Saya's hair has turned silver. The lines at her eyes come from decades of laughter, much of it at my expense. Yet when she looks across the table at me, I still see the woman I found in the snow, unbroken, proud, alive. Some nights when the wind moves just right through the canyon, I swear I hear Cinder's voice carried on it. Words I don't understand. But I know their meaning. Gratitude. For loving his woman. For raising his son. For giving them a life that mattered. People sometimes ask if I regret leaving the cavalry behind. If I regret choosing an Apache woman and a child not born of my blood. Regret is a luxury I never had. I made my choice on a frozen December night, and I've lived with it every day since. Some things that look like ruin turn out to be salvation. Sometimes what you think will end you is the very thing that keeps you alive. And that is the truth of my life. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for listening. If this story has touched your heart, I invite you to stay with us to discover more true tales of the Wild West. Stories that honor resilience, tenderness, and the spirit that God placed in those who blazed the trail. Subscribe, share, leave your thoughts in the comments, and join us once again to journey across this untamed land. Thank you. Aviso, legal/disclaimer. These stories are crafted purely for entertainment and may contain imaginative additions or dramatic interpretations inspired by old frontier eras. We use AI-based resources, voice imagery, and drafting as part of our creative process, but every final detail is carefully reviewed and shaped by human effort to preserve emotional depth and authenticity. We strictly follow YouTube's rules regarding AI-generated content and refrain from deepfakes, altered identities, or misleading representations. All images, sounds, and related materials are lawfully obtained. Please do not reuse, modify, or distribute any portion of this content without written permission. Thank you for valuing creativity, respect, and original work.